So this is a backwards looking way of working on understanding periods and sentences and things where we know the definitions, we've looked at recordings and scores, and now you're going to try and apply that through some simple composition. For instance, here it's compose a sentence, and the beginning has already been given to you. So if I hit play, maybe from the beginning, play from the beginning. Now, if you're composer shy and you're really worried about this, don't be. It's an excuse to have you think about what these mini forms actually mean, and usually we can get away with doing something really simple, and then the hard composing is, not an issue. Let's just start with this one right here. A sentence is X. It's a little fragment like this right here, and then X prime, usually some kind of variation, but it means it's recognizable as being related to X. And then stuff that runs to a cadence. Stuff can be anything, so it's really not that important for this exercise. But what we need to do is we need to recognize that ya-da-da-da-dum, okay, needs to come back here. Probably rhythmically the same if you want to keep it really simple, because that keeps the shape of it the same, and the contour of going down and coming back up is probably also important. And then of course we need it to fit the chords. Okay, I'll give you two possible examples of what that might look like. I think the first one is we can just do this thing again. See how this starts on the fifth of the chord right here? Let's just move it down to the fifth of the chord right here. So this is a B flat chord because we're on a 5 chord, so it'll be like that, okay? And so if we have that now, and we hit too many, oh, I didn't go across the measure, sorry. Not jumping automatically. There we go. Then you can hear this be X and X prime. They're in different parts of the scale because there's two different chords. And then you just have to march to the end with things. Another thing we could do is we could go in the opposite direction, but if we keep it sort of the same, ya-da-da-da-dum, bum, 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 bum. And then here, bum, 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 bum. It's not as satisfying. We're doing the opposite direction, so it pulls away from the original, but it's still recognizable as being a fragment of, that's similar to the first fragment. Right? And that's not so different from Mozart, for instance. His most famous sort of sentence is Einklang nach Musik. Bum, 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 bum. It's going down and then up, and then the next one is bum, 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 bum. Same idea, but heading in the other direction. So that's good. All right, I'm going to choose one that's neither of those for this, but you get the idea, and you could do that. I'm going to go ya-da-da-da-dum, and then I'm going to just go down a step. Ba-da-da-bum-bum, like that, maybe. Instead of being literal like that, I think I just like to have this dissonance be like that right there, I think. Let me just see what I think about that. Yeah, I could go either way. It could be the D to represent this skip right here, but we'll just do that right there. That's it. And then, because this is a B flat 7 chord, I went to the 7th, 5th. It's passing tone, neighbor tone back to the 5th, right? This was 5th. And then because of this, I mean, we could have changed this to be a step, but it's okay. And then we just march to the end. So if this is the part that's giving you trepidation, just go with what you know. Like I went, yada-da-da-da, yada-da-da-dum. And I'm going to start the end of this with another repetition, or at least the beginning of right? The, the fragment again, this idea of these going down. And I'm just going to run to the end thinking about chords. This is not as important to understanding the form. Obviously, it's very important to composition, but that's not the point of this worksheet. So let's see, it says an E flat chord. That's good. Sixth chord would be a C chord. So I'm going to, let's see, this is a sixth chord, but it's, I don't think there's inversions here. This should be a 6/6. Yada, yada, da, 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 yada, da, da, da. And I'm gonna go the other way. Ba-da-da. G, it depends on what we're doing here. Ba-da-da-da. It's fine because it's a neighbor to this. A flat chord, and then B flat, and then maybe we skip to, now we got a bunch of parallel fifths, so that's not going to work. You can see that these are fifths right there, so we have to think about maybe doing something. I'll run up in thirds and just see what that sounds. No, this is not my final thing, but right, we'll see. And then this is a one chord, so 1, 2, 6, 4, sorry. So that'll be an F chord. So this is, that would be a seventh. We'll change it. I'm gonna see what it sounds like anyway. Just like that. Now, you can see that I was fairly cavalier with this. I had this idea, and then I went in the opposite direction and I ran. This is not my, this doesn't mean we're gonna love it, but it gets a lot of material in there that we can react to, and that's how we deal with this next part. It came from a gestural idea, and then obviously there'll be second, third drafts. But from the beginning, you can tell this is a sentence because it's got XX prime and then stuff that runs to a cadence. Yeah, I don't like this right here. I would change this. This works better if this is more in line with outlining the harmonies and things, and maybe we want it to slow down for a minute so that it can speed into here so it doesn't feel like we're running on the entire time. I will do this indulgently. And I'm just gonna spend a little time. It's not part of the chord, but that is. Bum, bum, bum. Yeah, there. And then. And then maybe this is here. And that's enough to get us to the end. I don't know. This is not a good note here. We'll just leave it like that, I think, right? Sure. And let's just call it good. You get the idea. Okay, there we go. we can spend forever working on different things we like about the second half, but we understand what a period is and what made it function at the beginning here. This next one, parallel period. Okay, let me just change my settings right here. So we're going to move from measure 12, I guess. So it'll always start at the beginning of this. Sure. Okay, so a parallel period is where you have one phrase and another phrase, where the first one makes a less conclusive cadence, and then the second one is your consequent. This is an antecedent or question. Consequent or answer has more conclusive cadence, and we can see that this is a half cadence here, and this is an authentic cadence here. Parallel means that they have similar or very similar beginnings of these question and answer. And you're going like, what's the cheapest thing we can do? We can copy this right here, just like that. So bum, ba 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 bum, bum, bum. We're just going to do the same thing here. We have to alter some of the notes because, well, maybe we don't, but we probably do, because the 6th chord is different than the 1 chord right here, right? So we're going to adapt this. Bum, ba da 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 dum. And how do we do this? Let's just listen. I'm just going to pick the next note that comes to mind. Bum, bum. It's the D, which is part of the 6th chord right here. I'm in the key of B, so this is, or D, so this is a B chord, right? And I just sang into it. And now I'm going to copy, you know, as much of this as I can, right? So, and hopefully that leads me into the 2 chord. We may have to alter a note here to make that work, but let's see. 2 chord is going to be an E chord, and so bum 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 would be a non-chord tone, which if we love this contour and we don't want to change this note, we can try, right? So, and we'll just come back to this chord right here. And so, and then da, da, like that, okay? So I'm using the same kind of idea, even though the intervals are not perfectly the same, because I really like this step in there, and this is a non-chord tone now, right? And then yeah, I like that. And then the ending can be anything we want. Now, you could experiment with different things, and I'll try one different one, but I, you know, and then we're going to go da, ba, da. Keep it real simple. If I wanted it to keep going on to the next one, right? Let me play that for you. This is like saying we're not done. There's going to be more. So I went away from a perfect authentic cadence and went up to the 3rd of the chord, thwarting the sense of finality right there. Okay. And then if you hate the harsh dissonance there, we can make it be offset so that they don't strike at the same time, soften it a bit, and then we just finish it with a perfect authentic cadence like that, and we'll play it one more time. Right? Works just fine. If we wanted to, we could change this here to be something else. but it has to sound very much like this, right? Um, if you decide to invert it, it has to be obvious enough that it's still like this, and I'm not sure that we can do that. We could just find another place for this to sit in the chord, like instead of going, we could go, and we could try. Maybe it's not part of the chord, but so maybe this. Maybe this does, come down the chord like that now, right? Bum, ba-dum, bum, bum. And maybe we make this be the same as that rhythm-wise. So we'll put a non-chord tone there like that. And, different things. You have possibilities. But notice that the simplest thing I did was I related back because it's parallel, right? Same thing, right? Same idea. That's fine, okay? I think the other thing that speaking as a composer first, as opposed to just teaching theory, a lot of people learn harmony and theory and how to analyze and stuff, but they never translates into how to write music. And I think what this teaches us, especially with these first two examples, where we did this derivatively of that and this derivatively of that, is that we enjoy repetition, but not always perfect repetition, because that can be boring. We like to see the transformation of something, but we still want to see where it transforms from and to. And what that translates into composition is that you sort of are responsible, once you start a conversation, to be faithful to that topic. You can go somewhere with it. You don't have to sit there and keep redoing the same thing over and over again, but you are responsible. If this was a personal interaction and somebody came up and said, hey, so-and-so, how's your mom doing? I heard she was sick, right? And then you start to talk about that, and then they just completely disregard your answer and go somewhere else random. Instead of saying, returning to that and saying, I'm so sorry to hear about that, or I'm glad that she's feeling better. Or you can go somewhere with that. You can say like, oh, that reminds me of this thing that I saw the other day or read about, or I was talking to somebody. It's still related, even though it's not reflective of that original question to that. And so when you otherwise it's random, and maybe you want that effect, but that's not it's not always going to be your best bet. In music, you have to make sort of the same choice. If we go yum, ba 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 bum bum bum, well, we're kind of responsible for that. Do we do the same thing exactly and change the chords to make it the same, so it's a repeated sort of thing? If it's a different chord, do we adapt it to the other chord, right? Or do we do something random and different, or maybe different enough that you go like, that's a good complement, right? If you have a hamburger, you have something on the side at a restaurant. It could be fries, it could be broccoli. If you want the healthy option, it can be whatever you want, but you're still thinking about how they pair. Now, you don't go like burger and another small burger, right? You have something that complements it, but they still kind of fit together. And that's what this next one is here. So, and I don't think I have time this morning to get this last one done, but it's more of a free ride anyways. But let's just talk about contrasting period. So you're going to do something that's not the same, but it still should pair well or make sense with the thing you're doing, right? So let me bring this down to 20, so it'll always start there. Okay, good. And so now it's the same music. It was done on purpose that way. So now we can say, well, what are we going to do differently here? So it's bum ba da da dee da dum dum Da-dee-dum. I think the biggest thing is to get away from this rhythm, because this has been repeated twice. It's almost sentence-esque in its own way, right? There's a very big parallel between this and that. In fact, some sentences are X and X prime make a phrase and a phrase, and they make their own period, and then you can go on. But you see that, sort of the same thing, even though we're calling them different things. Let's break away from this rhythmic identity, right? So instead of long, short, 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 like this, we go bum, ba da da dee da dum, bum, ba da dee dum. So let's get as far away from it as we can. Let's go like ba, like that. Now, I started on the right note. This is also in the chord. That's not. So we have to think about where are we arriving here. And again, we probably want to get away from this quarter note thing going on here. So already our contour is different, but mostly our rhythm identity is different. So, and I'm just going to go up. And then we can rise or we can fall. We could keep going. That's a non-chord tone. This was a it's like holds over and becomes a chord tone. Maybe we can do the same thing here, right? So that is a chord tone. It's an anticipation, but this could take there we go. We build an idea, and again, this is our just first time at this. Not saying you're going to love everything, but you get it in there and make it kind of fit with the chords, and then see what you like and what you don't like, and you can react to it. And that's a composer's issue, not a form issue, but you have something to work with rather than imagining it all in your head. Let's just listen to what that is. It's really mediocre. It's okay, but it's just ba-da-dum-bum. I feel like this needs to at least come back down, and then if it's going to go up, because it's becoming really obvious. This is a separate issue, though, right? This is not so ba-da-dum, ba-da-dum. Sure. And then maybe non-chord tone like that. I don't know. It's it's like this is where you spend lots of time, but this is also maybe where it's not as important to think about other than we got the idea. That's better to do the reading, but maybe all of these need to be retaken. Maybe that seventh. It's a beating. Well, we'll just try that, right? It's gonna go from right there. Better, and we can keep working with that. Ba-da-dee, dum, ba-da-dee. We can even do things like, move this over again to give us a little more, ba-da-da-da-da-dee, da. That might even be just a little better. And we're going to stop at this point, I think, but you can listen one more time. Different one. We won't worry about this one. This is just asymmetrical period, which means that this first phrase, because of the way it's written, is not as long as this one here, and you have to, do stuff. It's fine. The point that I want to make with this, though, is that these forms, first off, if you can do this with the beginning parts to get their essential parts, you understand what they are and you'll hear them and see them better in other people's music. The other thing is, it gives you a starting place to say, what do I compose next? Right? That is it going to be the same? Is it going to be transformative? Is it going to be contrasting, different? Right? So it's repetition, variation, or contrast. And then it lets you lay in an idea and work with it, which you then can react to. So although these results we have are maybe not perfect yet, they're getting close and or closer to acceptable. And and you can see that composition doesn't have to be a scary thing because there are principles involved. And if you will let yourself do multiple iterations, it's kind of like when you're writing an essay or a story. You have a first draft, second draft, third draft, those kind of things, and you let yourself refine it. So if you're sanding and polishing wood, you wouldn't go for the 3000 grit right away. You'd cut it and shape it and chisel it kind of into the shape, and then you'd refine that some more, and eventually you'd start to sand, and then you'd use coarser and then less coarse and less coarse sandpaper along the way. Nobody has a problem with that. For some reason, we all have Mozart in our head thinking it just drops out of heaven, and you write it down when it's music, and that's not true. You have to work it, right? I'll let these all play through. It'll be a little weird and jarring when we have the change here, but just so you can hear them one more time. Remember, a sentence has an X fragment and a Y, which is, X prime fragment, and then a Y, which is running to a cadence. Parallel period starts with an idea, and then the second half of it, right, the other consequence starts with a similar enough idea that you can relate it and say those are equivalent or similar or varied enough so that you go they're the same. And then contrasting is when it's different enough that you go these are not the same. And like I said, that there are advantages to both, right? All kinds of things. So let me just drop this to leftmost measure, get this out of the way, and just one last time before we go. Mm-hmm. All right, seems fine. This with the written out twice almost feels like it's going to be a repeated period with a first ending and a second ending. It's kind of nice. Um, Now, I think the other thing that just needs to be addressed from a compositional point of view, if you're going like, "Yay, we're composers, we did this," um, there's just also, is it practical to play? Right? Is it enough? Like the first one, moving at the tempo that it's at, I think is perfectly fine to leave as a two-parter, right? And if you want, I think the contrasting and these parallel contrasting periods we did here are also fine as well, because it's got the chord structure in the left hand and so on, right? But there have been times when I've been writing and like I wrote a piano sonata, and it was fairly difficult. Some of it was very difficult, and I would take it to a friend, colleague who was is an excellent, like really, national level pianist, and I would sit down and say, "What do you think about this? What about this?" We did it like lessons. I paid for a weekly spot. She'd review it, and then she'd say, "This is good. This is good. Have you thought? Why didn't you do this?" And almost always it was like, "Why didn't you add these notes here that would fit into the bottom part of the hand?" Or why don't you jump the octave or something here instead? The I was always erring on the easier side, because I'm not the pianist that she is. Um, Maybe if you're a beginning composer, it works the other way, actually. You need to put it in front of the player because um, they will say, "This is not realistic. This is too hard," or "This would be much better if we could just do this." I find that's what I do with my daughter. She's a cellist when I write for her. Um, I've been doing it for such a long time now. And she's such a good cellist that I just write all kinds of stuff. And most of it, like 90% of it's good, but some of it is like, it would be much better if it'd be like this. It's not that she can't play it, it just gets, you get the same effect. You get 99% of the same effect for like 50% of the work. So you don't always have to stay in a, you know, this texture and this texture, right? You could say maybe there's something else that gets dropped in there, right? I think these are fine the way they are, but we just need to be thoughtful about, is it playable? And on the other side of that spectrum, are you shortchanging the music because you could add more? Because you know our knowledge of how it gets played is skewed by our own perception of playing the instrument. So that's all. All right. Hope this was useful, both from how do you just, you know, do you know these forms, and then how would you approach it when you see these forms again in music somewhere else? You'll go like, oh, it's like that. You might even go like, oh, I would have done it like this, or you could have done it like that, and that's kind of a fun place to be. All right.